Let's go ahead and try to get through this as quickly as we can. So again, thanks for joining me, especially those of you who are patient with me. I appreciate it. One of the things that really hit me is when I talk about doing these anti-inflammatory diets and I talk to clients. I've always loved food, and I've always loved to, we all love to eat, right? It's one of the best things in the world. But what I've come to understand, particularly about myself, is although I love what food is, the flavor and the yumminess of it, I more love what it does and what it means. And so when I talk about that, what's important is food is communication. So it's what tells our cells and our DNA what to do. And so if we are eating, and I tell this to a lot of people, so some of this might be repetitive, but I think it's so important. I'll probably say it in every talk I ever give. But food is, if we're eating a clean, organic, healthy food, it's a clean line of communication to our cells, to our DNA, and our body knows how to function. Now, there are a whole lot of things when it comes to inflammation. It's not just food. We have lifestyle factors, but our focus obviously here is food. And so if we're eating a food that is, it's not clean, it's not organic, it's got pesticides, herbicides, it's full of sugar, it's full of unhealthy oils, then it's sending an unclean, very broken line of communication to our cells and our DNA. And so the anti-inflammatory diet is just that. So it is eating clean food so our body knows what to do. It's about squashing the fire of inflammation and sending all of the right messages to our DNA and to our cells. And so our DNA know how to create proper expression, right? And so clean food creates good natural DNA expression. And so when we look at the anti-inflammatory diet, I call it it's called a diet. I hate really the term diet because it doesn't make any sense, really. It's a lifestyle. Going on a diet, it's got a terrible connotation to it. They're miserable. We're always miserable. This is about making small changes throughout our lives. I've been making changes in my own life for, 25 years as I've learned myself and new data comes out. And it's about learning and understanding our own bodies, but then, giving our body what it needs to be fueled and to keep that inflammation at bay. And so I just put this slide in here because everything that I talk about, it's got data behind it. I have the sources, and I'm a data-driven person, and I need to know that when I'm talking with people and I'm doing webinars like this, that the data is backing me up. And so, of course, this is why I run labs too, right? So it's understanding the data about a body or understanding the data that I'm trying to send out to everyone else. So we have really good information that we can take with us. Okay, so what are anti-inflammatory foods? We hear this all the time, but do we truly know what anti-inflammatory foods are? For me, it kind of seems like it's fairly simple, but it really isn't always. And so the things we know are vegetables. And what I'm going to tell you more than anything else is we have to have lots of vegetables. I don't care if your genotype is a higher protein genotype or a lower protein genotype or a higher carbohydrate genotype, which is stuff that I look for when I'm working with my clients. I want to know what their genotype is so I know what their macronutrient intake should be. But
Nikki?
Yeah.
Hey, really quick, it's Emily. Are you going to share this PowerPoint or should I be taking notes? I missed the very beginning.
Yeah, I'm going to share it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Recording. Yep. Thanks.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Okay, so let's see, where was I? So vegetables should be the bulk of our diet no matter what, right? Our plate should be mostly full of vegetables. We need good healthy fat. We need good healthy meat, some more than others, but we have to have lots of vegetables. That's what truly keeps inflammation at bay. Fruits are good but fruits aren't the end all be all. We need fruit, but they still have sugar. So if we're looking at someone who has blood sugar issues, or you know, they're diabetic, you know, there's this inflammatory process that's already going on, fruit might not be the best thing. So it's got lots of great things to it, you know, good antioxidants, good fiber, but something that we need to remember about vegetables too, vegetables are carbohydrates. And so often when we think about carbohydrates, we're thinking about, you know, bread and pasta, or, you know, sugar, that kind of thing. But we need good, healthy carbohydrates that come from vegetables and sometimes from fruit. Let's see. So we also have lots of good herbs and spices, you know, which are all plant-based, right? They're all really great. So we've got turmeric, and we've got ginger and garlic and peppers and basil and cinnamon and rosemary and thyme, and all these amazing herbs that make our food taste really good, and they're fun to play with and experiment with. But they are so full of amazing nutrients and phytonutrients and antioxidants, and some of them even pathogen killing properties, that these are amazing little herbs, just sort of power-packed little herbs. All right, so moving on, what is inflammation? And it's funny because I was asked this one time, and you know, I was sort of surprised, because my thought is, well, I thought everybody knows what inflammation is. Well, that's not really true, because we think of inflammation as a pain. You know, you can look at the picture here, and it's a pain in the knee, and so we're thinking, okay, there's some inflammation. You know, what's wrong with my knee? Let's see what we can do to fix it. But you know, we have this normal inflammatory process where if we cut ourselves, or we, you know, heaven forbid, break a bone or something like that, we have this inflammatory process that starts, and it's really important that we have this inflammatory process. And so this cascade begins to start the healing of the inflammation. But then we have to have the anti-inflammatory cascade come in to help squash that inflammation. So just think about putting out a fire. So it's all a very natural process, and it's in balance. Just as everything else, we have to have balance. What can happen though is we have a chronic inflammatory response. So chronic meaning that fire is not being put out. And so when that happens, you know, that's when, you know, we have what's called this cell danger response. And so there's something going on, there's some imbalance, there's a lack of communication with cells, with DNA, the body doesn't know what to do. So we have this cell danger response that goes out, inflammation happens, and then what happens? We get autoimmune conditions, we get heart disease and diabetes and all of these chronic diseases, where the core, the foundation of chronic disease is inflammation. So what we have to find out is not just say, okay, I had this inflammation, that's it, we just need to put the inflammation out. We've got to figure out what the inflammation is coming from. So is it coming from a bacterial infection that's not been seen? Is it coming from, you know, a parasite, or leaky gut, or you know, bacteria that's out of place in the gut? You know, there's so many factors. Stress, you know, these lifestyle factors, too much exercise, not enough exercise. So all of these things can create this inflammatory process. And so, you know, we have these diseases that we're suffering from, when really, if we start to figure out where they are coming from, so many of them have the ability to, you know, just through food and nutrition and maybe some supplementation and understanding it, these are lifestyle diseases for the most part. They truly are. And so understanding that is key. And then, of course, again, understanding where the problem and the imbalance is coming from. Okay, let's see. Okay, and this is another interesting thing, and probably most of you have heard this, but maybe some of you haven't, is that depression, anxiety, these mood disorders, well, I'd say all of them, there is a chronic underlying inflammatory process that's going on. So is the imbalance, could it be a micronutrient imbalance? Could it be the wrong nutrients that you're taking in? Or is there not enough nutrients? And so we have this imbalance that is manifesting or presenting as depression, anxiety, Could it be as serious as bipolar and schizophrenia? Sure. There was a study done back, I think it was in the 50s, where these physicians in a schizophrenic hospital took out all gluten-containing products in this hospital, and the incidence of schizophrenic events just plummeted. And so when you take out the inflammatory triggers, then we start to lower the inflammation. The body starts to learn how to balance itself. So keep that in mind. We have just an insane amount of depression and anxiety disorders. I think it's just rampant. And why? There's so many things. There are lots of things we can do just nutritionally by changing our diet, by doing the anti-inflammatory lifestyle that can help with this. Okay, so let's talk about the anti-inflammatory foods. So it is shown and proven that, you know, good healthy foods, good healthy fats, vegetables, fruit, these things do have anti-inflammatory properties. I see when I run labs, I see these inflammatory markers all the time, and so much of it again, it can be, this fire can be squashed with just a change in lifestyle. And so let's see. So good foods. Good foods, again, as we know, good vegetables. There's an interesting component to cruciferous vegetables. So cruciferous vegetables being broccoli, dim, cabbage, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, things like that, and it's called DIM. And so what DIM is it helps the liver to flush out estrogens. And so we have such an influx of estrogen in our body due to the plastics and the chemicals, pesticides, herbicides. They're all hormone disruptors. And so we can build estrogen. And so what DIM does is it works. We've got, you know, essentially 2 phases of liver detoxification, actually 3, but two phases. And so you've got phase 1 and phase 2. So DIM works on phase 1, and it really helps to flush out that excess estrogen. And so when we're eating good, healthy cruciferous vegetables, we're actually helping our liver work better. And so it's pretty amazing stuff. And so obviously tomatoes are anti-inflammatory, olive oil, other good leafy greens, you know, they're high in folate, good vitamins and minerals, and then things like salmon. So when you were looking at fish, we only want wild caught fish. We don't want farm raised. Farm raised are full of toxins and chemicals, even coloring, like salmon, they put coloring in the water, so the salmon will actually be pink because they're farm raised and they're not pink anymore. It's really sad and scary. But so think smash. So it's going to be salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. Those are the fish that are going to be the best. They're going to be the lowest in toxins, the metals and stuff that we get from the water. And they have good healthy fats in them, the good omega-3s. And so that's a really great way to remember the best fish. Even, you know, I'm a fan of the canned fish. Now you want to make sure that it's the BPA-free lining. But those can be great for snacks and still really, you know, especially if they got the bones in them still, you're getting good minerals. So that's a really great thing to do. You know, and for some, you know, Lowell, you and I talked about this a little bit, but coffee. Not everybody can do coffee, but coffee can be great for some people. But again, it goes back to genetics. We're all different, and some people can handle coffee, some people can't, but I would still say always do organic. And if it's something that is helpful for you and you're not dependent on it, that's another key. If you're not dependent on it, you don't have to have that, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 cups in the afternoon to keep you going. You know, that's when there's a problem. But a little bit of coffee, it's fine. I think it's great. Good antioxidants. So I think that's good stuff. All right. So I want to dig in a little bit into the anti-inflammatory properties of foods. And so one of the things, you know, we talk about vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, especially this is going to be in our plant-based, you know, fruits and vegetables. But there are things to understand, I think. So, you know, there's so many of us that really don't understand, do we do raw, do we do cooked, what's better? And some of it's going to be based on our health status. You know, there are certain issues in the gut that don't allow for people to eat raw vegetables. And so that's something that needs to be addressed, because that's absolutely not normal, so needs to be addressed. But in most cases, vegetables should be eaten cooked and raw. So what happens when vegetables are cooked, we lose, for the most part, we'll lose the vitamins, but we won't lose the minerals. Minerals will always be around. They don't go anywhere, just like a rock, right? Rocks are minerals. They may be broken down, but they don't go anywhere. But vitamins can be destroyed. So this is not necessarily a bad thing. So, you know, one of the great things about bone broth is, you know, lots of the vitamins are destroyed, but you get all of these minerals and this collagen, and it's all packed into this amazing soup, which is bone broth. It's super healthy. And so there are things, though, there are components to fruits and vegetables, particularly vegetables, that if they're not cooked, then they're not as bioavailable. So if we think about a tomato, we think about a tomato as having good, healthy lycopene in it. It's good for the eyes. Well, if you eat a raw tomato, the bioavailability of the lycopene is pretty small. But if you cook a tomato, it increases the bioavailability of lycopene. So it's really important to have a good mix of good, healthy, raw and cooked vegetables. And I think, you know, and again, a little bit of fruit, vegetables, focus on your vegetables. So let's talk about omega-3 fatty acids. This is one that is really, I think, confusing to a lot of people, especially those that are only plant-based, because there's the thought that we have the ability to get omega-3 fatty acids through vegetables. Now, in a way that's true, but the omega-3 in vegetables or in nuts and seeds is called ALA, which is alpha-linolenic acid. Now, alpha-linolenic acid is a precursor to DHA and EPA, which is the active form of omega-3, the anti-inflammatory form of omega-3 that's found in fish. So what happens if we're eating the plant-based, we have to convert the ALA to the EPA and the DHA. Now, our bodies aren't really great at doing that. So we're making our body work to convert the ALA to the EPA and the DHA. And so what needs to happen is we just need to take in the EPA and the DHA, so it takes that step out, and we're actually getting the true active anti-inflammatory form of the omega-3. So let's talk about the differences between omega-3 and omega-6. We talked earlier about the inflammatory process or the pro-inflammatory process and the anti-inflammatory process. There is a balance to both, as I said, and so omega-3 is a precursor to what's called the anti-inflammatory cytokines, and which is what creates, these are the little components that create the healing or the inflammation squashing cascade. Omega-6s are the precursors, or the precursors to the pro-inflammatory cytokines. Okay, so we have to have both, and we have to have this nice natural balance. But what can happen is if we're eating foods that are higher in omega-6, if we're eating animals that are not fully grass-fed, if we're eating lots of vegetable oils, these things that are high in the inflammatory omega-6, we're getting too much omega-6, which means we're creating this constant inflammation in our body. And so this is why it's important to do the fish oils, be sure you're getting enough omega-3. I test for this all the time, and I almost always see people with too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3. And so we put on fish oil. That doesn't mean that we need that the more is better, because we still have to have a balance there. There's a ratio, and there's still, you know, kind of still out to, you know, still trying to understand what that true ratio is. But there is a good balance of the omega-3 and omega-6 that we need to keep, but not overdo. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about vitamin D as well. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble nutrient, and, you know, we talk about, you know, we, especially those of us that live here in Colorado, you know, we're closer to the sun, it seems, but, you know, vitamin D is synthesized in the skin through the sun, but where we live as a country, we are at a very different place than if we were closer to the equator. And so we don't necessarily get the amount of sun, even if we spend a lot of time in the sun, to do a really good conversion of that vitamin D in the skin. There are also a lot of genetic factors, or there are genetic factors that allow us to or not to have that conversion in the skin as well. And so I look at genetics, and when if someone isn't holding on to their vitamin D, I can see it in their genes and say, okay, you're probably a person that needs to continue vitamin D supplementation indefinitely because it's your genetics. And that's not always the case, but understanding that vitamin D is important, that the sun is important. Don't be afraid of going out in the sun, and don't cover yourself with clothes, of course, unless it's cold, which it is here now, but, you know, and sunscreen. The sunscreen is what is much, much more dangerous than the sun. So getting natural vitamin D as much as you can through the sun, but then knowing what your D levels are and making sure that you're getting that your body's getting the vitamin D that it needs. Low vitamin D is, you know, associated with many, probably most inflammatory processes, inflammatory conditions. Even if it's just chronic pain. I know my husband was having some chronic pain. His D was really low. We put him on D, and his pain went away. It was amazing, and it was not even understanding that there was a link between the two at the time. So D is important. D is fat soluble, which means we get it. The best sources come from animal sources. Any fat soluble nutrient is going to come, the best sources are going to be from animal sources. So if you are not eating any kind of animal meats, they're not, what we have to remember is they are not inflammatory unless we're doing too much or unless you're not getting the right source. So if you're eating conventional meat, conventional butter versus good grass-fed, this is where the inflammation, or the pro-inflammatory process versus the anti-inflammatory process, is going to come in. Because if we're eating animals that are inflamed, that's going to create inflammation in us. Okay, let's see. So there's always a question about how much we need. And I think I hit on this a little while ago, is, you know, you're going to hear through mainstream media and mainstream medicine and even mainstream nutrition that we need so many servings a day, and especially fruits. You know, they tell you that you need almost as much fruit a day as you need vegetable. And, you know, I think as much vegetable as we can get in is very important. Don't eat when you're not hungry, but when you're hungry, load up on veggies. But we can't say that to people who have blood sugar problems, to eat that much fruit. It's a problem. So everything really depends on health status. Just like meat. I am a low meat genotype, but that doesn't mean everybody's a low meat genotype. Okay, I'm a low meat, low fat genotype. And so we have to, all of this is very generalized, but understanding who you are, which is what I do when I work with my clients, is I test, I understand who they are as individuals, because that's how I know how to help, is through understanding their specific biochemical makeup. Okay, let's see. And I jumped ahead a little bit, but I was talking about fats and meat, and so this is kind of the slide that we're on now. But what I did here, so many people have a question about soy. And, you know, can soy be a protein replacer? Is it healthy? It's got phytoestrogens. What is it about soy? And I think it's important to understand that are only a few occasions where I believe soy is actually beneficial. I've been on both sides of the fence. Soy was the devil and soy is great. Of course, that, you know, when it was very early on when I thought soy was great, and then I was educated. It is not the devil, but it is usually not a great thing. So there are some people who need those phytoestrogens, but you want to be very careful about that. Now, when it comes to soy, there are only a few forms of soy that I'm okay with. Must be organic. It is I think it's 94% of the soy out there is genetically modified. It might be even higher now. It's also very, very high in pesticides and herbicides. So we have to be really aware of the type of soy we're taking in. On top of that, I don't think edamame is a healthy food, even if it's organic. I don't think that tofu is a healthy food. What I think are healthy foods are those fermented soy foods. That would be natto, miso, tamari, and I'm missing one, tempeh. So those foods are fermented. They I don't want to get too deep into this, but there are some things that are not healthy for us, some enzymes in soy that are not healthy for us. And so the fermentation process, at the same time as it's building bugs, good healthy bugs for us, it's also inactivating these enzymes that are not good for us. So
so Nikki, would you say that organic soy, tofu is not good?
I am not a fan of organic tofu, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay, but you said tempeh you think is
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would do tempeh. Now, keeping in mind that tempeh, if you cook it, right, it's still going to destroy the good bugs, but it's still, you know, a better choice than tofu.
Okay.
Okay. There's another thing I want to, you know, when I want to talk about fats, something that I haven't hit on are the nuts and seeds, and I feel like maybe I did a little bit earlier, but we want to, and this is a place where we want to understand our bodies, because there are a lot of people, and there's a lot of data that shows that nuts and seeds and gluten-free grains are beneficial for us and healthy for us. And I believe in a lot of cases they are. Better raw, especially nuts and seeds, they're going to have their good healthy fats are going to be intact. If you cook them, it changes them, potentially makes them rancid. And so the thing that we need to keep in mind too is there are people out there that have what's called lectin intolerance, and this can be a real problem for some people. And so it goes back again to understanding that not everybody's the same. I can give these general guidelines, but not everybody's the same. So we have to understand who we are as individuals. So, you know, almonds, I think that they're great for a lot of people. Walnuts, great for a lot of people. Gluten-free grains can be great for a lot of people. Some people just can't handle them. So if you're having some issues, whether it's GI issues or some kind of inflammatory stuff that's going on, you know, this is where an elimination diet, if you haven't done food sensitivity testing and that kind of thing, can come in handy in understanding what foods to eliminate and what foods to keep in, because you just might be one of those people that can't do lectins, or you've got a leaky gut issue and you're reacting to everything, which I see a lot, which is not necessarily reaction to the food, it's just the reaction to the inflammatory process and the immune system being upregulated. So knowing the differences, which is not easy, which is why I'm here. Okay. So I want to talk about some spices, especially turmeric. There's a lot of information out there about turmeric, about its anti-inflammatory properties. It's great stuff. I love it. But what we have to understand, there are a couple of things. Kind of amazes me a little bit that turmeric is sold in capsules, because all you really need to do is buy a spice jar of turmeric and put it in your food. You know, that's the best way to enjoy it. But what we need to understand about turmeric is the active component of turmeric is curcumin. And curcumin is what has the anti-inflammatory properties. The interesting thing about it's not a very bioavailable molecule, I guess. And so we don't absorb it well. So if we are taking curcumin therapeutically, which I use a ton, therapeutically, it's got to be combined with a couple of things. So there is a component to black pepper called piperine. And so if you're looking at a supplement, the supplements that I use are always professional lines, but if you're looking at a supplement, you want to make sure that it's got piperine in it, or the commercial name for it, it's called bioperin. Also, you want to have with it phospholipids, which are fats. So if you are, say, you've heard about the milk, was the yellow, I just lost my, I forgot what it's called.
Golden milk.
Golden milk. Thanks.
Golden milk.
Yeah. So the golden milk is usually coconut milk. Sometimes it's regular milk. And then turmeric, a little bit of honey. But if you have to add black pepper, so you've got the black pepper, you've got the fat in there with the milk, hopefully it's coconut milk, and then you've got the turmeric. And it's besides it being just super yummy, you know, it's got some anti-inflammatory properties to it. So those two things to add to turmeric is really, or to the curcumin, is really important in order for it to be therapeutic. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else on here that I want to talk about?
Hey, Nikki.
Yeah.
Quick question. Maybe this is a dumb question, but I've seen on labels like turmeric, T-U-M, versus turmeric, T-U-R. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, it's spelled turmeric, T-U-R. It's just not, they just don't spell it correctly.
Okay, I've seen it both ways. I didn't know which one was right.
Yep, it's turmeric.
With an R?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. I would say another thing that I want to hit on, which I think is a bit of a problem, is the fact that people say that red wine is anti-inflammatory. I think that probably red wine has it. Well, I know it has anti-inflammatory properties. It's got resveratrol in it, which is another product that I use all the time. It's great stuff. But I think that what you're doing is you're sort of canceling out the good for the bad. And don't get me wrong, because I love wine. Wine's great stuff. But it doesn't mean it's healthy for us. And it doesn't mean that we should have, you know, there's some that say, you know, have 2 glasses of wine a day. Maybe that's true, but I really think it's creating more inflammation. It's creating more problems on the liver, especially if it's not organic, especially if they add sugar to it. And, you know, these are all things that we don't know. So instead of saying, okay, I'm going to go drink a glass of wine or 2 a day, you know, let's think about incorporating resveratrol or even, you know, grapes instead of, you know, drinking wine every day. Just, you know, it then goes back to beer too. Beer, I think in its own way can be somewhat healthy. And I'll go back to the way it used to be, where it's not pasteurized. It's a fermented food, right? So is wine. They're fermented foods. So when they are in their natural state, you know, they're lower in alcohol. They have good bugs in them. You know, there's some good that's there. But to say, yeah, you should have a glass every day, I think it really is creating more issue, especially in the world we live in now, where we have so much junk that's added to our conventional foods, that we just have to be so careful. If we're making our own, maybe a little bit of a different story. We understand that it's organic. We understand that the alcohol content is low and that we've got good bugs going in there. I mean, the good bugs, that's the best thing, right? But, you know, let's take it a notch back and, you know, not assume that drinking a bunch of wine is healthy for us. I think it's a real problem. Okay, so foods to avoid. Dairy, and people hate it when I say this because it's, you know, everybody loves dairy. Dairy and wheat or gluten have the ability to bypass the blood-brain barrier and hit morphine receptors in our brain, which is why we become essentially addicted to dairy and to bread and to pasta. We can't live without it. We hear this all the time. I can't live without my cheese, or I can't live without my bread. It's not, you know, it's a chemical thing. Truly, I think in most cases it is. And so understanding that maybe can help those that do believe that they have to have it, you know, kind of move away from that. And it's not always easy. But the problem is with dairy is, especially conventional dairy, it's a dead food. There's nothing good to it. It is always, always inflammatory. Now, there are some people that can handle raw dairy. Raw dairy can be a health food. And this could take me down a massive rabbit hole, and I won't go into it because it's truly interesting, but it's just too much. But some raw dairy can be beneficial for some people. You can look at genetics, but anybody that has any kind of autoimmune condition, I don't care what their situation is, they have to avoid dairy and they have to avoid gluten, always, because they already have an inflammatory process going on, and it will create more inflammation no matter what. We've got lots and lots of autoimmune conditions all over the place. And once you have one autoimmune condition, the likelihood of having more and more pop up, it increases exponentially. So understanding again, it's all about understanding your body, but then just staying away from the conventional dairy. It doesn't do anybody any good. You don't get good calcium out of it. You definitely don't get good bugs out of it, probiotics. The protein is destroyed. So it's just, we don't utilize it as well because it's been cooked, right? So though it's really important to understand that about dairy. And then omega-6s. We talked about omega-6s, but we get these really unhealthy omega-6s through the trans fats, through vegetable oils, canola oil. Canola oil is just nasty stuff. The only time canola oil may have the ability to be beneficial to anyone is if it's organic and not processed, and it's not shelf stable. So I don't know how long it would last without being processed, but my bet is just a few days, maybe a week, where we have these oils that sit on the shelves for weeks or months, maybe. So it has to go through this process to be stabilized. Well, that stabilizing process creates a really excessively inflammatory oil. And the problem is we're told by cardiologists, by the American Heart Association, who happens to be in bed with the canola group, that these are healthy fats because they are they're monounsaturated fatty acids. And we have these poor people who already have cardiovascular disease. They're trying to do their best they can. They're told to eat canola oil. And what happens? They are creating much more inflammation. So we want to stick with olive oil, although we don't cook with olive oil. You want to just pour olive oil on your food. You can cook with avocado oil, though. Another healthy fat's going to be coconut oil. Some people can do butter, only if it's grass-fed, and ghee. Those can be fine. Some people can also do good, healthy, that's the key, tallow and lard. So lard from pork or from pigs, and then tallow from beef, but it must be grass-fed, 100% grass-fed, no grain finishing at all. Or you create. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, what about grapeseed oil, or any, like, you know how they kind of package things as a Mediterranean oil?
Yeah. I'm a little bit on the fence with grapeseed. I think it's a little bit higher in omega-6 than I want. It also has omega-9, but I would say for me, if I'm working with somebody to bring down their inflammation, I would not do grapeseed oil.
Okay.
If somebody is pretty well balanced, then, periodic grapeseed oil, I think is okay. So yeah, it depends on the situation.
So for cooking, avocado oil is king.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or well, you're vegetarian, vegetarian, but for others, the grass-fed tallow and the grass-fed and the ghee and the grass-fed lard, those can be good as well, especially for high heat. And you don't want to do a lot of it, but when I'm cooking bacon, I know it's a good healthy source. I keep the fat and I use it. Just like our grandparents and great-grandparents did years and years ago.
Oh yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. We talked about, so we hit on meat, the sweets. I mean, we just kind of already know that sugar is bad, but one of the things that I think can help to hit that home is the fact that we have this thought, and it's been perpetuated in our society, that it's fat and cholesterol that is what creates cardiovascular disease. It is just it's just incorrect. Sugar, processed foods, these unhealthy vegetable oils, these are the things that create inflammation, create cardiovascular disease. And then, of course, the sugar raises cholesterol, bad cholesterol. Cholesterol is produced from the liver. Sugar affects the liver, and so then it can be raised. I want to back that up a little bit. There are certain genotypes where we do need to be careful with some fat. Okay, I'm one of those. And so again, it goes back to who we are as a person, but the biggest problem is sugar, hands down. You know, whether it's sugar from pasta, processed foods, or just candies and Cokes and all of that stuff. It's just really, really bad news, and stuff that just needs to be just absolutely eliminated out of the diet. Okay. We talked about the trans fats. So trans fats are going to be things like, you know, the butter replacers. Those things are just awful. Butter replacers, canola oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, tends to be, probably not always, but can be a trans fat. I'm sure there are some others. Soybean, cottonseed, besides being genetically modified, going to just be really nasty, rancid oils. And then artificial sweeteners. It's being shown that things like aspartame will increase the incidence of Alzheimer's disease. There are tons of factors that go into Alzheimer's disease, and I'm learning more and more about that all the time. But these artificial sweeteners are worse for us than the regular sugar is. It also spikes the blood sugar. So something hits the tongue that is sweet, whether it's sugar or honey or an artificial sweetener, it still has the ability to spike blood sugar. So we have people that are trying to do the best that they can. They're trying to lose weight. They're trying to get rid of their diabetes, and they're replacing sugar with the sweeteners. It actually creates more of an issue. They gain more weight. Their diabetes can just kind of go out of whack. So understanding, again, these fake foods that our society has come up with, they're not doing us any good. You know, food from the earth. That's what we need. Okay, I probably beat that to death.
Nikki.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Stacy. Just a quick question. Were you saying that honey is not a good substitute, or?
No. Yeah, sorry. What I was saying is honey can still spike the blood sugar.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So honey's great. Not all honey. Raw honey is the best. It's got good probiotics in it. It's got a lot of it's anti-inflammatory. It's anti-pathogenic. It's really great stuff. But again, it's a heavy-duty sugar, so we want to be careful with it, especially if we've got blood sugar issues.
Nikki, also on that, I think you and I have talked a little bit about agave nectar, and you don't recommend that, right?
No, I don't. Okay. Yeah, I think it's probably as bad as corn syrup or high fructose corn syrup.
Okay. And then what about vanilla, like high quality vanilla?
No, it's the best stuff in the world.
Great.
Yeah, so I think if there's anybody that is on that wants to just sort of jump in and ask questions, if there are any questions, let me know, or you can always email me or whatever, but I'm here if you have questions.
And there's a couple of things on the chat over to the side too, just so you know.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see it. Hold on.
That's okay.
Nikki, what about coconut sugar?
I like coconut sugar. I think that it's still sugar, but if I use sugar in, let me find my chat. Where's my chat? If I use sugar at all, it's going to be coconut sugar, but you still have to just, keep it at a minimum.
Would you say that that's better than using the honey to sweeten? Like, say you wanted to sweeten your tea, would you do coconut sugar or honey?
That's a good question. I think if I think through it, I would probably use coconut sugar because the heat's going to destroy the good benefits of the honey, the raw honey. And so if I'm using something cool, or if I'm drinking something cool and I want a little sweet, I think using the honey. But you don't want to destroy all the good stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
And actually, on the same note, when you were talking about coffee, I was going to ask about tea, because I don't love coffee. I maybe have it like every other day, but are there teas, and again, probably organic, but you know, good things that you would recommend tea wise?
You know, this is not like a tea that I would, you know, like a packet, but one of the things that I really love is called Dandy Blend.
Okay. I think so. I don't, how do you spell it?
It's made from dandelion, so DANDY
Oh, okay.
BLEND. Yeah.
Okay.
So the cool thing about that, you know, I think you're probably getting some good stuff from it. You know, dandelions are great, but it's roasted. So how much are you getting out of it? You know, some good minerals, that kind of thing. But it's got some, I think it's got some really good prebiotics in it. So it's got chicory. And so these are the things that feed our gut bacteria. So I appreciate that for what it is, that it's a, you know, it's a good kind of starchy food that, or drink, I guess. I like to mix it with coconut milk.
Yeah,
my favorite way. Yeah. And it's a little bit creamy, and it's got a touch of sweet to it for no reason other than it just does. Well, actually, it's got a little barley in it, but the gluten is, the processing of the barley gets rid of the gluten. So this is considered a gluten-free product, obviously, because I'm gluten-free. But sorry, getting off topic, except it's yummy, and I think it's a really great prebiotic too.
And also, like the same thing you were saying with turmeric and stuff, like I know that there's a lot of turmeric teas or ginger teas, but when you heat it up to that level, are you then negating the purposes of those spices?
Not with the spices, I don't think
Okay.
so. I think that the components in there, like the curcumin, those components are heat stable.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
I've got a couple of questions. Let me look at this real quick and see. Sorry, guys.
One of those was mine, and I was just asking you to repeat which fish you said that you preferred.
Okay, good. Let's see. White grapes do not have resveratrol. It's only found in red grapes. Yes, very true. Thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that. What about stevia or xylitol? Stevia, yes. Xylitol, I'm really on the fence with. What I will say is if you have dogs, do not give your dogs xylitol. It will kill them. Stevia is a plant, you know, and I think it's you know, if you need a little bit of sweet, I think it's a great replacer. It's the best replacer out there. Xylitol, there's some data that shows it's good for the teeth. You know, I actually add it to my toothpaste. I make my own toothpaste, so I'll use xylitol. You know, it helps with the flavor, but then I'm not swallowing it. So I'm a little on the fence. I don't think it's the best thing in the world, but it's probably not the worst thing either. I hope that helps. You know, everything, there's so much gray to everything. It can be tough. All right. Oh, one new message. I'm getting used to all of this stuff. All right. Thanks for joining, Lola. See you tomorrow. Anybody else?
I guess, again, this is Emily. So since I'm vegetarian and I cook vegetarian, you know, it is hard. And so I wanted to go back a little bit to the soy and also the cooking oils. And I think you answered that pretty good. And we've talked about this offline before, but you know, just any other ideas for somebody who's trying to maybe just cut some meat out of their diet every once in a while, or who is vegetarian or vegan, just kind of broadly?
So you're talking about just ideas for how to get enough protein?
Well, yeah, but more like, because I think that sometimes with the cooking oils and like, you know, a ton of vegetarians and vegans do rely on soy. So I'm just more asking kind of like, you know, how to broach that subject and not make it sound like it's some contraband or something.
Well, I think soy is just, for the most part, one of the worst things, not always, but one of the worst things that we can do.
Okay.
There's just really not a lot, except for those that I mentioned, different.
Yep.
It just, doing a soy protein, any of that stuff, it's just not good. Now, there are some really good proteins, and, but we've got to be careful with vegan proteins because they tend to be high in heavy metals. It's crazy and it stinks, but it's true.
Oh, really? I didn't, see, I didn't even know that. Okay.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of proteins that I use. I know they're different. It depends on the person, obviously, but I will use a whey protein for some people.
Okay.
I'll also use a protein that's either pea or rice based for some people. And there's also a collagen based. So it's going to be more the amino acids, not necessarily what you would want probably, but it's going to be more amino acids.
Yeah. Actually, I do. I mean, I'm vegetarian and I ended up buying a collagen peptides thing sprinkle. And I didn't even realize until I sort of looked at it closer. And, for me, it's okay. And it works great. And I put it in as much as I can. So
good for you. Yeah, I think it's great. I think that's a smart thing for you to do.
What about things like nutritional yeast?
For people who are not dealing with yeast overgrowth, I think it's great.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Hold on. let's see. Well, the questions are coming in and I'm missing them.
I had a question about the fish. Which fish you were saying? I know wild caught, which that's only what we get, but what would you say are the lowest risk fish? Because I love fish.
Did you hear me talk about smash?
I did not.
Okay, that's okay. It was earlier on. So smash is going to be sardines, mackerel, anchovies, I'm missing one, and herring. What's the other S? Sardine.
Salmon.
Thank you.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What is in? Okay, so we did that one. So have I seen anyone change their reaction to food allergies through diet? I mean, yeah, I think so. A lot of times if we just remove the things that are being reactive over time, the body will adjust. But it really depends on, I think it depends on the health status, what's going on, why there's the reaction to it, what's creating. Sometimes we get immune reactions to foods because those are the foods that we're eating all the time. I see it all the time. People that have limited diets. I eat a couple of vegetables and only chicken, and like chicken, broccoli. We hear this all the time. I eat chicken, rice, and broccoli. I eat it every day because it's healthy for me. Well, we end up reacting to it because our body's like, I need food. I need different types of food. And that's another thing, going back to the vegetables. The plant-based foods, the broader the variety, the broader our microbiome will be, which is really, really important. So we don't want to have just these 5 vegetables that we eat all the time. We want to incorporate all kinds of stuff to help build our good microbiome, because that helps with mental and emotional balance, right? With immune system, all of that stuff. Our microbiome is we're showing is so important, and there's so much more to it, and it affects so much of who we are when it comes to health status and mental and emotional balance, that we need to eat. It just keeps going back to lots of vegetables and lots of different kinds of vegetables. I hope that answered your question. That's when it comes to food allergies or even to sensitivities, it can be a little bit loaded, because we can get sensitivities because we've got or allergies, mostly sensitivities, but because we have bacterial infection or a parasite or just an overreactive immune system. There's so many things that can go into food sensitivities that's where the testing comes in, because I can't just say absolutely yes to one thing or absolutely no. There's just a lot to it. I think that let me know if that didn't answer your question. And Heather, you got the smashed fishes. Yes.
What was the A fish again? Sorry.
It's okay. Anchovies.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? We good? So I feel like I should apologize to everyone for not giving the the PIN number to this. I sort of messed that up, but I'm glad that y'all found it. And next time, I'm doing this again in 2 weeks, but then it's going to be monthly. So hopefully it'll be a little bit more smooth the next time. And so,
is it the same topic, or are you doing different topics each time?
Oh, different topics for sure.
Oh, great. Okay. And how can we share this with our people?
That's a good question, and one that I'm working on. It's being recorded.
Okay, just let me know.
Yeah, it's being recorded through Zoom. I will, at minimum, maybe I can just share it with all of you through the software that I'm using this for. But I know I'm going to have a YouTube station. I know I'm going to have it, you know, that link to my website. So hopefully there will be multiple ways where you can share it or watch it if you want to. And there are a lot of people that wanted to see it that couldn't. Yeah.
Even to share it, like to share the actual event or the webinar, so that I can just, you know, we can say like, this is a nutritionist that, you know, is presenting this. And, you know, I don't know if you can do it like as a Facebook event or something.
There was. Well, I can do Facebook Live, but it was shared through email and through Facebook. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Stacy. And anybody else? Okay, so I want y'all to know, some of you already know this, but on my website, I have an assessment. It's a free health assessment you can fill out. I'll take a look at it. I'll talk to you a little bit about what I see or what I don't see. And, you know, it's just kind of a way for those of you who don't know me, if there are people still on that don't know me, getting to know, you know, what I look at, how we work, and, you know, kind of what it would look like moving forward if you wanted to work with me. So you can go to my tastelifenutrition.com, or you can do the bit.ly link, which will take you straight to the assessment itself. So, you know, feel free to fill that out. Let me know if you have questions. Again, I apologize for a little bit of craziness at the beginning of this, but we will get this together. And thanks everybody for being patient with me. But I appreciate your time. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.